Okay, good to go. Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Thank you to Neshamos for inviting me. By way of quick introduction, I'm Dvora Entin. I'm a therapist working out of Philadelphia, tend to work nationally. I have a specialization in the area of maternal mental health, which means that I work primarily with women and couples who are dealing with infertility, pregnancy loss, as well as perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So I have additional training in that area, but obviously all of us that are therapists at this time in kind of the world are really facing broader picture questions, but very often confines or the construct of whatever it is that we were dealing with before with our clients. So in being invited to speak tonight, I'm not speaking directly to the maternal or perinatal health issues that we are definitely facing of women who are pregnant or trying to become pregnant or dealing with losses at a very critical time. Instead, what we're going to kind of take it one step out and take a look at what it means to be in a caregiving role, a provider of care to others. Perhaps it's a professional care provider, perhaps it's a personal care provider, but being a provider to others and yet feeling like we're totally running on fumes. To set the stage for that, I think one of the things that we really have to kind of come to terms with is what does it mean in this time in our lives? How are we seeing this from a kind of sociological experience? So to me, the most complicated piece of this story is that the helping professionals, the providers, the ones who we would normally turn to for help, they're in the crisis too, right? So when I have a client who texts me and she says, I'm having a horrible day, I text her right back and said, me too, want to talk about it, right? Or if I have a client, I have had clients who will say to me like, I'm falling apart. And I'm very honest, I'll say, yeah, me too. Want to talk about it? Because there's a uniformity in this experience. And it's a challenge as professionals to be in the crisis with the clients. So the professional is supposed to be the helper and ultimately broaden that out, right? The mother or the father is supposed to be the helper to the children. The medical professionals are supposed to be the helpers and providers of medical care and stability and safety and healthcare, but they're in the crisis too, and they're dealing with their family and their friends who are also experiencing this pandemic. So the helpers are in crisis just as much as the people who are needing the help. So that's kind of, I think to me, the overarching challenge of this experience. What we have done before and what I would normally recommend or know about myself and what I need for, let's call it self-care, right? Or kind of what do I need in order to feel safe and healthy and kind of put together to be full, to feel like I'm not running on empty. A lot of those things are no longer available to me right now, right? So the things that I might have done in the past, I might say, oh, I need my friend time. Like when I go out and hang out with my friend for an hour, it fills me up in a way that I can come home and deal with whatever the stuff is that's going on at home. I can't do that. I don't have access to that friend time, the thing that fills me up. So a lot of the strategies such as, go to the gym, exercise, get help, things like that, not available to us. So a lot of the providers are feeling very much like the therapeutic providers are feeling like, where are we supposed to come up with new ideas to help and how complicated that is when we have a lot of limitations on the things that we would normally kind of be recommending and encouraging. So the things that I had before, maybe it was respite care, family support services, most of that is no longer available to us. Additionally, I think this kind of underscores the entire experience is that I don't know when this is going to end, right? So if somebody says to me, you're going to have a really rough 3 weeks, but in 3 weeks, you're going to kind of move back towards what you understand to be normal. In 5 weeks even, 4 weeks, this is going to kind of lift and we are going to return to something that feels a little bit more familiar, a little bit more comfortable. And one of the hardest pieces of this is that we don't have that as an option. We really have no way of knowing what that looks like. Will we be back to normal and what will normal look like or feel like? So the unendingness of it really is exhausting. And it helps, we can kind of figure it out when we have a short period of time to figure it out. But when I have no idea how long I have to keep on chugging and pushing and working so hard, there's an exhaustion, an emotional exhaustion that comes along with that. And that's part of what we're looking at tonight. So I think then another piece of this, not to like layer the pain on top of the pain, but we're also being constantly exposed to trauma. So it isn't just that we're going through this crazy time. Let's say we could pretend if we just ran out of electricity and this is what the world would look like. but we're dealing with trauma. We're dealing with pain. We're dealing with exposure to death. We're dealing with exposure to illness. We're dealing with real fears, right? These are not like imaginary fears. What if my whole family got sick? What if the hospitals were overloaded and there weren't enough ventilators? These are real. Like, there's nothing fake about that experience of fear. And so no amount of is going to take away something that's real, right? This is a very real, very concrete fear for us, for the whole world, right? And if I have in addition to that, if I am facing a financial challenge, right? If I have fear of my job, or I've lost my job and I don't know how I'm paying my rent or my mortgage, then again, no amount of like, well, we're going to get through this and you're going to do great. No amount of like kind of therapy is going to really be helping with a circumstance that is extremely real and really a feeling of direct threat. So we are living in this constant exposure, whether we're listening to the news or not, right? That in and of itself is going to layer this intensity upon us. I'm actually hearing also a lot of people feeling the threat from like the political conversation, that the political conversations are causing them to feel distress as well. So it's the exposure to the trauma of those that are sick, those that have died, those that I know who have died, those that are friends of those that I know, and the constant threat that isn't going away. So, and then finally, just in terms of just setting the stage in what does it mean to the challenges of living in this pandemic experience, I think the one last thing for those of us that have children, this intense kind of newness of my child is constantly disappointed and constantly sad of the things that they're daily or weekly experiencing as losses. I found it so painful and powerful too. It was really a moment where my child went in with my husband, who happens to be the principal of the school, and they went in to pick up some of their papers and some of the books that they needed for the rest of the school year. At night, after there was nobody else there, they had it was their time to go, and the two of them went together, and they came home and they were quiet and they were sad and there were tears, both of them. And it was an astounding moment to see the adult who is grieving his own loss. He said, like, it's like a frozen moment in time. And the child who's looking at this experience saying like, but this was the rest of my 8th grade year, right? And so for we so easily, we want to make things better, right? Parents want to make things easier, simpler, happier for our children. And in this moment, we don't have a way to do that. We can always focus on the good stuff, but that's not really what our children need from us in that moment. And so seeing our children kind of experiencing losses on a level that they've never really had to deal with before, that also is something that is kind of powerful to see and difficult as a care provider to see those of us around us struggling. So I want to move on to kind of really more focused and narrowing on the topic of tonight. And before I do that, I want to share with you a quick funny moment. So I have a niece whose birthday was this week, and the siblings were requested to send in birthday messages for her. And this, my sister graciously allowed me to share.
Happy birthday, Mayani. I just wanted to tell you how much I love you. And I just wanted to wish you a very, very happy birthday. I hope that you're having the best Corona birthday possible, because it's just amazing to be home with your family, enjoying this special time together. Happy birthday! I love you. I hope you'll come visit.
Guys, it's
we
a joke.
Miss you.
It's a joke, guys. Don't listen to the video.
Happy birthday.
Okay, so, I'm very grateful to her for allowing me to share that. She's like, well, why not? I mean, this is what real life looks like, right? And it does, okay? Right now, I see somebody shaking their head, right? Yeah, this is chaos that we're living in, right? How does a mother like that keep her sanity? How does a person who is a provider in the medical community, lahavdil, I'm gonna say, to separate it out, but like, how does a provider in the medical community who is going into work and doesn't have enough personal protective gear, and doesn't have enough support, and doesn't have any reprieve, how do they keep it together? What about the young couple who are newly married? There's so many facets of this that are very, very complicated. So let's talk about kind of what's normal. So normal in life would be, we live, assuming that there's a partnership in the family, assuming that there's a partner, I share time together, I spend time apart. My children go to school. If I have children, my kids go to school, they come home. I have a responsibility outside the home. Even if I work from home, I still have easy access to things in the external part of my life and in my world. And that's normal, right? Time apart, time together, time apart, time together. And I even heard, and that's what I would identify as like the normal structure of life as we know it. But here we are today in moments where I was astounding. I just heard a psak, I heard an eitzah, really, an advice that was given for a young couple who are about to get married and scheduled to get married. And the Rav said you should postpone the wedding because if you, the newlyweds are having a very difficult time. You know, they know each other well enough, but not necessarily well enough to spend 24 hours for the next 6 weeks together. That the intensity of that is actually really complicated for these young couples. And the Rav said it would be better to just push off the wedding when life is a little bit more returned to normal. To me, that's just unbelievable. Like that if you're thinking about that it's an acknowledgement that this togetherness all the time is not normal. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about irritability. Why am I so irritable? Everything is fine. I have food on my table. My job is, you know, I have finances to pay my bills. Like I'm getting along with, I heard from today, I'm getting along with my boyfriend fine. Why am I so irritable? Okay, why am I feeling so irritable? And she was trying to push it onto actually her mental health condition. And really I feel very strongly that, but the circumstances that we're living in are going to cause irritability. Like I cannot tell you how many times in the day I'm sitting here going to my family and saying to them, like, just don't talk to me right now. Or nobody's allowed to talk to me, or don't talk to each other. Because if you keep talking to each other, you're gonna kill each other and then I'm gonna just have to get mad, right? So it's like, don't talk to each other. It's like, why are these words coming out of my mouth? Don't talk to me, or don't talk to each other. Stop talking to each other, right? So there's an irritability that comes with the intensity in which we're living. And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that. So if everything is fine, why am I not feeling so fine? I think that's kind of the source of piece of this irritability. I hear a lot about expectations, like, but I'm supposed to, right? I should be doing these kind of things. Or I have an expectation of myself that I would have kept the house clean. I'm finally home. I should keep the house clean. I should have gone through the closets, or I should be that kind of parent, right? I should be the mother. I'm really disappointed in myself that I'm the parent who is mad or angry or screaming, or I'm losing my temper, right? And that is just so not me. And I'm so disappointed in myself. Or today, you know, that kind of parenting according to social media, parenting according to how others are parenting, that kind of feeling of I'm less than, or not doing it well enough as I either expect of myself or I think others expect of me. And I also think that there's a hypervigilance that's developing for many people. So, you know, married or not, family or not, couple or not, there's a hypervigilance that comes with living in the state of unknownness, right? So I'm kind of always in the state of, I have to be on guard, right? We know that when people come back from the military, that's really where the concept comes from, this experience of hypervigilance. I'm alert and aware because at any time I could have an IED that's exploding next to me. It's very difficult to live in the world when we are focused on what could be happening next, what could happen tomorrow, what do I need to be concerned about, where's the next threat, right? So we have just by nature, by experience, where we are right now is in a state of extraordinary hypervigilance. So I hear a lot of people expressing to me things like, I just can't settle at night. First of all, it's the only time it's quiet. But also I'm kind of on high alert. Like I should be exhausted and I'm not exhausted enough to go to bed, or I'm waking up in the middle of the night and I can't fall back asleep. So the sense of like, I need to be alert, I need to be aware, I need to be awake and on guard is also exhausting, right? It's emotionally and physically exhausting to be in a state of hypervigilance all the time. So, you know, if I would say I would normally address this from a therapeutic perspective, I might say things like, how do I, you know, fill up my tank? How do I find the things that are calm, a more sense of calm? What are the things that, you know, that soothe me or support me? Or again, we're in the situation where we don't really have a lot of resources. I want to do two things. One is I want to bring up I see that my internet is unstable, which kind of speaks to the society today, is this instability. Hopefully we can get through that. I think what I want to bring up is two pieces. The first one is an attachment theory perspective, and then we'll get to the second one in a few minutes. So there's a concept within ACT, the idea of being present. It's a way of dealing with challenges. So there's three components of it. One is to be present. Number two is to open up. Okay. And number 3 is to do what matters. So number 1 is to say, I need to be present with my thoughts, my feelings, my emotion without judgment, right? So that might look like, I'm so irritable tonight. And instead of saying, what's wrong with me? Or I'm such a horrible mother tonight, or I really failed in today's parenting moment, or I really was obnoxious to my client or my colleague. I really should have held my tongue, right? Then I might say, ooh, I'm just irritable in the moment. Today, I feel very irritable, right? That might be 1, to be present, to open up. Okay, to open up, to say, I need to make space for these emotions and these thoughts and these feelings. I need to make space for them, okay, to allow them. And then the 3rd piece of this is to do what matters, okay? So there's a choice point here that we're going to talk about. There's a choice point. And I need to kind of make decisions based on what are my values, okay? Obviously, we're considering this as Torah values, as ethical values. What do I want to make a statement about in the way that I will lead my life as I move into the next hour? In the way that I lead, in the way that, or even kind of in a retrospective, when I look back on this time, what do I want to be able to say about that experience? I can say it was horrible, it was hard, it was so disappointing, it was so sad, right? And I can also say, and I was very sad, and I was irritable, and I had a really hard time. And then there's the choice point. So the choice point might be, and I worked very hard every day to find moments where I was really gentle and kind to my children. Or I really tried very hard to sing. And when I sing, my kids didn't experience the anxiety that I was feeling. Or I had music playing in the house when it wasn't Sfira, right? And the music set the tone for Simcha. Or Erev Shabbos, I tuned in whatever Zoom call was available, right? That it is something where I can, I listen to a Zoom of Kabbalah Shabbos, of Nigunim, of Matzei Shabbos, Malav Malkas, just to fill my soul in a way that my soul could give me some strength in those moments. But it's not just for me, it's for the environment in which I'm living. So being present with my thoughts, my feelings without judgment, being opening up to making space for these emotions and these thoughts and these feelings without judgment. I have to create space for it. Notice when I talked about, let's say my child going into school being sad when she came home, my job in that moment as a parent was not to say to her, but Baruch Hashem, you're safe, you have all your friends are healthy and we're okay, right? It was just about being present with her thoughts and feelings. It's really hard. I'm really sad with you. I really didn't imagine this to be your 8th grade year, right? And then what do I want to do at this time so that when I look back on it, either today, yesterday, or in 10 years, what do I want to say about how I managed the time that we had in quarantine or in the pandemic? We'll get to some more specific examples in a moment. But the thing we have to realize is that this kind of a situation, again, if I said we have to do this and make choices during difficult times for 1 day, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, right? We can do that. It might be hard depending if we've had practice. Have we faced challenges before? Do we have a history of resiliency? But I also know that there's a point where this begins to wear on my bones, right? It begins to wear me down. It's a wearing process. And that's part of this kind of sense of, how do I manage this experience? I could have done this for a week, could have done this for 5, but to continue doing it in an unending way, how do I manage this in the long run? So I really go back to when, as a care provider, okay, in any capacity, as a care provider, remember when you get on the airplane and they say to you, in the event of a low pressure cabin pressure, masks will fall from the ceiling. Please put your mask on first before you attend to the child sitting next to you or an adult who's behaving like the child sitting next to you, right? That was always a Southwest line. So what's my oxygen mask? If I'm on empty or I'm low oxygen, and I recognize the correlation between this and COVID, right? I understand that, but put that aside for a minute. If I need an oxygen mask because I'm low oxygen, I don't have enough to give to the person. If I'm on empty, right? How am I expected to give to somebody else? I cannot continue to give without being filled up to some degree or another. It's interesting. There was a federal laws that passed many years ago, there were employment laws, that you could not work laborers without a certain number of breaks. And most institutions, and I'm sure there's like limitations to it, but most businesses, you are entitled to a 15-minute morning break, 15-minute afternoon break, and a 30-minute lunch break. that's kind of mandatory. Today, sometimes the line workers, the construction workers, they're very clear. 12 o'clock, they're out the door, they're eating their lunches on the curb when they're allowed to work, right? But the laws are in place because they did enough studies that showed that when people took breaks and filled themselves for a few minutes, when they came back to work, they were refreshed. Okay, we have studies to show the same thing even with naps, that if we could get in a 15 to 20 minute nap, not much more than that, but a 20-minute nap can also refresh me for the rest of the day. That idea of respite, of reprieve, of refill. But if I'm primary care provider, I'm primary caregiver, I'm the parent in this moment in time, and there's nobody to reprieve me, maybe I'm a single parent, maybe I'm sharing parenting responsibilities with the guy who's working really, really hard in the basement, right, who isn't available to help with the parenting responsibilities at home. Maybe I'm also working, right? I'm trying to work full time and take care of toddlers and children, kids that would have been in school and daycare, trying to manage and juggle, and I'm completely depleted. So how do I put on my oxygen mask? So a few things to think about. So this is where I kind of move into the second piece of kind of a perspective. So the first one being those choice points, where can I choose differently? And we'll get to some ideas. But the second piece, and I just want to mention, there's an incredible book, if you have time to read a book, there's a book called The Choice by Edith Eva Eger. She's actually been interviewed quite a bit. She's on YouTube, she's on Facebook. She's an amazing Holocaust survivor who talks all about the choices we make with really, really difficult situations, hers being Auschwitz. If you have a few minutes, listen to her, watch her, learn from her. Her book is the expanded version of that. It's extraordinary, extraordinary story, which I went through with highlighters and sticky notes because I use it so much. She talks about these choice points that where we make a moment in time, we make decisions and choices that will determine what comes next and will determine how I will see myself and my experience in the past as I look backwards in time once I've gotten through the difficulties. But the second piece I want to talk about is this idea of establishing this internal locus of safety and security. So, and also really safety and control. So one of the things that we're hearing from people in the world today is this idea of everything feels very scary, right? I listed to you when we started all the really awful, scary things that we are dealing with in the world today, right? When I listed all of those things, it can feel extremely flooding, totally overwhelming. Oh my God, these things are really real. This is not a reality TV show, right? This is something that is, I can't believe I'm facing this situation in real life. This is my life, and one day I will be able to talk about this in Mitzvah Hashem, but for right now, this is where I am today. The whole world feels scary. How do I differentiate between the world out there feels scary and the world in here is safe? The world out there feels frightening, overwhelming, death-related, and in here there's safety and security, okay? So one of the things we want to think about are ways to create safety and security, feelings and reality, even if it's for brief moments in time, okay? So if I say to you, put on your oxygen mask, right? If you talk to me a few weeks or months ago, and we talked about what your oxygen mask would be, some women have told me getting my nails done every couple of weeks. It's just, I just relax, I turn off my phone so nobody talks to me, this is my quiet time. Or I go to the gym and I'm in my yoga class and nobody talks to me. Or I just drive and nobody's in the car with me. Or I'm home by myself for the first hour in the morning, my quiet time, that's my filler, right? That is my oxygen mask. Those things are no longer available. And from a reality perspective, I don't have, bulk hours of time where I am able to, fully embrace the oxygen, right? I don't. I'll have minutes. I may have moments. So I want to share with you some of the techniques that I have done recently in order to fully embrace the momentary grounding experiences that I use when I feel like the world is falling apart, the world is crazy, and I have to find moments of safety, security in here, not only physically in me, but in my home and in my family. So one of the things out of my mind, but one of the things that I did is I printed out, we went to a tulip farm a couple of weeks ago. We didn't get out of the car. You just drive around the tulip farm. It was really an unbelievable experience. It was our Holomy trip. It was so pathetic. But we went to a tulip farm and the kids were able to roll down the windows and they could see all the flowers blooming. And we took these pictures out the window at the tulip farm in New Jersey. What was astounding, just as an aside, was, if I said to the kids, we're gonna go to a tulip farm at Holomy, they'd be like, that's so stupid, I'm not going and I'm staying home, right? Now they were up and dressed at 9 a.m. to get out of the house to go see this tulip farm, okay? Unheard of. And when we finished driving through the 5-minute road, my kids were like, can we do it again? Can we like go again? Can we go around again, right? We changed our perspective of celebration, our perspective of like fun really changed. And then when I came home, I just had these photos on my phone and I thought, I need more things that are beautiful for me to look at. So I printed these out and I had them mailed to my house and I just taped them to the wall in my kitchen. And my kids were like, why did you do that? And I said, because I need places in the house where I can take a moment to appreciate the beauty that I'm looking at, okay? So I don't have tulips growing outside my house, but I have tulip pictures in my kitchen. And so my intention is not just like, oh, there's the pictures in the kitchen. My intention is when I walk into the kitchen, if I can just stop for a second, 15 seconds, and I say, look at the beauty of that flower. There's a beautiful flower. The world is still blooming. Perhaps I'm thinking that. Or I'm thinking about spring is coming, things can change, right? Or I could say, maybe I'm even in a spiritual space and I might say, look at what Hashem created, right? Look at the nuance of all the unique colors and there's so many varieties of tulips and I'd love to plant a tulip garden one day, okay? My thoughts can go in many different directions, but I'm quieting and creating an internal locus of safety and control. In this moment, in here, I have a minute of quiet or 30 seconds of quiet where I can appreciate a tulip, okay? I'm doing the same thing in my office, which happens to have glass at my playroom. And I look out the window and I'm noticing the things outside. And this I totally credit for my mother because my mother would go, oh, look at the bird, right? Out the window of the kitchen. And we'd all have to go running to go look at the bird out the kitchen window. Thanks, Mom. She's actually on the call. And it would be a beautiful red cardinal. So like, growing up would be like, yeah, Mom, we saw it already. Like, why do we have to come? Oh, yeah, okay. Like, oh, look, it's a deer. Okay, but we saw it already. Oh, it's very cool. Like, and then can I go back to my room, right? But in this moment in time, I'm sitting on my couch and I'm in between clients. And sometimes I'm even with clients and I'll share it with them. Oh, take a minute, look at this beautiful, I saw a finch and I saw a cardinal, I saw a bunny rabbit and I saw this American robin, I think it's called. And I see the cardinals with their mate, right? And in that moment, I'll say, oh, look, there's a red cardinal with her mate. Isn't that interesting? The world continues to create. Hashem continues to create. Or that's just beautiful. The color red is profound. These are not things that I would normally have done. Okay, this is truly a product of being in a space where this is where I begin to appreciate things that I never did before. But it's not really about appreciation, it's about pause. So when I've created a routine now as well, that when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I make myself a cup of tea and I sit down in the couch, out the window, and I look outside. If it's raining, I notice the rain. If it's quiet, I notice the flowers that are blooming or the trees that are just starting to sprout. And I take a moment of pause and quiet. Personally, that's actually when I daven. I try to have my sitter with me, and that's my quiet time with my tea, and then I daven. And some people will, kind of see that as a mindful moment, and it is a mindfulness. Call it whatever you want, but it's that for me, it's a grounding space. This is how I begin my day, and I've actually worked towards ending my day that as well. So I end my day on that couch with a cup of tea to kind of bracket the day. It's a way of creating safety, security, control internally. So the rest of the world can be in chaos. And in this moment, I can find moments of quiet and safety and security. The goal is, when I would normally say respite and cleaning help and babysitting and family support and, all these other coping strategies that we would usually have when I'm totally on empty and I need help and that are not available to us right now. So we have to create moments in time that fill us. Those are my oxygen. That's my oxygen mask. Okay. I think that kind of coming up with things, and truthfully, we can't know what it is that fills us up until we try. So these ideas might not feel very grounding to you. They might say, like, I just don't appreciate that, but you might find something else that works for you. I actually have candles also that I put them out on the table, and every day, almost throughout the day, I have a candle burning in the house that smells beautiful. So I like the smell. Like, my husband hates the smell, but he's in the basement, so it's fine. I like the smell, and I feel like, okay, this is a way for me to be reminded of internal safety, security here in my home. That's my goal, to try to create that environment. Obviously, if you have toddlers, don't light candles, but okay. The other thing, though, you're noticing is we're not talking about creating an hour. We're not talking about creating 3 hours. We're not saying, step away for 2 days. I wish we could say, let's go take a vacation. We're talking about moments in time. And one of the things that I hear frequently, parents, it was such a bad day. It was such a bad day, right? And I asked them, can you find me 5 minutes where things went well? 5 minutes where there was quiet. Maybe it was just when they were napping, right? You all got them down to the nap at the same time. Great, 5 minutes where it was quiet. So can you find 5 minutes where things were peaceful in the house and where you can look at those 5 minutes and say, I lived those 5 minutes according to my values. Remember the choice points we discussed before. I lived those 5 minutes according to my values. I found 5 minutes in it. So it wasn't a bad day. The other hours didn't go according to plan, but those 5 minutes were according to my values. Those were my choice points, okay? So thinking about not good days or bad days or we're trying to find moments of celebration, moments of joy, moments of I got it right, or just moments of peacefulness, not only internal peacefulness, maybe it's family or environmental peacefulness in my home. So what is working for me today? Notice them, pay attention to them. The other thing that I think is really valuable and important, perhaps some of you will admit to seeing the Netflix show Cheer, okay, very successful, very popular show. And I think one of the things that was so popular about that show, I will admit to having seen it, is there was such a sense of cheering each other on. Okay, they called it mat talk. Okay, good. Somebody admitted to seeing it. Thank you so much in the chat. By the way, I will answer the questions on the chat later. So there's this idea of mat talk. So mat talk, which is where they come to the mat and they cheer each other on, their friends who are doing these intricate, detailed, dangerous routines, and they're screaming from the sidelines, you've got this, good girl, you've got that position, keep on doing it, push harder, higher, and they're cheering and they're clapping. That mat talk, I think about that, what would it be like for us when we're parenting or when we're living the life that we're living right now, when we're working, if we had mat talk, if we had somebody going, you've got this, you're doing a great job, right? So we have to be our own mat talkers. We have to be the ones to be able to take 5 minutes at the end of the day, or maybe it's at my couch with my cup of tea, where I can say, okay, what went right today, what did not? Like, what was successful and what was not? So even just like today, I took a few minutes this morning before I rushed through my day and I cuddled with my child. And it was a very mindful decision. I really wanted to get up and get the day going, but I got into bed with her and I cuddled with her for 3-4 minutes and she kissed me and I kissed her. And then I got up and started my day, right? And I think about that was a good moment. And so I can say, hey, good job, Dvora. You took 3 to 4 minutes, even though you wanted to start your day. Good job. You got, well done. Try it again tomorrow. So we have to become our own mat talkers. We really have to find the moment where we can kind of cheer each other up or cheer ourselves up. And don't forget to be the mat talk for other people in your life. Like, well done. Like, look to your spouse, to your friend, to your loved one, to your friend who's struggling. Like, find the thing that they're successful in and cheer them on, because it's hard when we're dealing with this stuff on a daily and constant basis. So coming back to this idea of putting on my oxygen mask first, one of the things that I think is a little bit different, and I haven't given this 100 hours of kind of talk. Yeah, it's more about saying, it's this idea of, I think historically I would always say, I need to take care of myself, and then my partner comes next, my spouse comes next, and then the kids, because if the parents are unified and the parents are connected, and the parents are healthy, the children will be fine. I'm really wondering if during quarantine and during this, epidemic experience, it's me, because I need to be safe and healthy and well cared for, kind of from a mental health perspective. It's me, and then it's my children, because nobody else is taking care of them. I have no choice but to put them next. And then my spouse, because he's an adult, hopefully, right? He's the one who has to be able to take care of himself as well. We will then rejoin as a partnership and kind of realign as partners in terms of caring for each other. But what that means, right? Because I can't be the care provider for everybody. It's not possible. I need to hope that my spouse is well and healthy enough to kind of internalize the same kind of messaging and care for themselves as I care for myself. But one of the things that we should be thinking about is, have I offered my spouse that step away, right? Have I offered my spouse the 5 minutes on the couch? Have I said to my spouse, hey, listen, 5 minutes, kids hadn't gotten up yet. I got my cup of coffee on the couch. It was so replenishing. Why don't you just take 5 minutes to go take a walk around the block? I've got the house. I'll take care of the home life right now. Giving each other those few moments of respite is critical, especially if there's chaos in the home. So if you're dealing in a home with lots of toddlers that don't take care of themselves and don't feed themselves at all, if you're dealing with a newborn in the house where the baby's up all night, because babies are up all night, it is critical that you offer the respite to each other and check in with each other. How are you doing? What do you need? Do you need something from me? Especially if you're noticing, you know, the intense irritability that tends to pop up at this time. So what is we want to idea. What are your goals? Like, what are the goals in terms of like, where do you need to kind of make some shifts or changes in order to fill yourself up? You do have to know what fills you. It may not be any of the things that I mentioned, it may be something else. I would caution though, the filling up in terms of alcohol, of kind of increase in drinking that we're noticing among, it's a cautionary tale. So we want you to be mindful and aware of that. There seems to be a lot of sanctioned drinking online, a lot among the parenting community who are like, how early can I start drinking? Now, a lot of it is jest and joking with each other, I get it, but there is definitely an increase in alcohol use. And especially if there's a history of dependency, we want to be very cautious and kind of aware of that. We need to find healthy ways to fill ourselves up, even if it's in kind of bite-sized pieces. The other thing I think that's very important is to share your frustrations with your spouse. It's so healthy to be able to say to a spouse, today was such a hard day, it was such a hard day, I don't even know why it was such a hard day. And then also don't forget to teach your spouse how to respond. So the response from the spouse has to be like, I know, I'm so sorry, it was such a hard day, me too. Or the response, because the response cannot be like, what are you gonna do tomorrow? Right? You gotta teach your spouse how to give you the response that you need in order to feel supported and validated and able to be like, this was so hard. And then just be like, okay, I'm gonna try again tomorrow. Or I found 5 minutes of my day today that I can really actually celebrate because I was okay in those 5 minutes. The one thing that I think has to be kind of an umbrella over all of this is the concept of mental health, kind of a mental health pause. So the whole world is in this experience right now, but not everybody has a history of mental health issues. If you have a mental health condition already, if you already have a diagnosis or a subclinical diagnosis of anxiety, depression, OCD, if there's domestic violence in the home and you're stuck in a house with an abuser, then a lot of these issues and a lot of these suggestions and ideas are not really 100% relevant to you. And I think that one of the things we really need to do, and there may be conflict in this, not everybody's going to agree with me, but we absolutely have to prioritize mental health as a part of our decision making. So I recently had a conversation with a new mother who has Pitzels at home, you know, a bunch of very, very young children. She's dealing with a very new baby with no help and no respite. And I don't even like using the word falling apart, but those are the words that she would use. I'm falling apart. And very, very tearful, not sleeping, not having time to eat. Other children are feeling very stressed. And I said to her, like, what is the cost risk analysis, right? The risk benefit analysis to bringing in somebody into the home to help you. And even though it's, you know, against the rules, we have a crisis making process as well. So we have to make a risk benefit analysis of what would be the benefit to this whole family who's in struggle, and make decisions based on that. If it is respite care, if it is bringing in a nurse, if it is bringing in a babysitter to help in the home, a family member, etc. There are risks associated with that, but there's also the mental health crisis that has to have validity. So just being mindful, I know my internet is again unstable, being mindful of the decision-making may have and should have a mental health kind of overlay when making decisions that we have to weigh the risks and the benefit of kind of some of those decisions. Okay, finally, I think it's critical that people remember that there is help available out there. We unfortunately, in the most severe situation today, heard of the death of an ER physician in New York, one of the frontline providers who died by suicide this afternoon. She was an ER doctor who had expressed again and again how bereaved she was and how bereft she was and devastated she was at the care that she could not provide the people that were coming into her emergency room. And she was actually staying with family. She had stepped away from the hospital for a few days because of her incredible response to the pain that she was in. And unfortunately, she died by suicide. We cannot have more deaths because of the intensity of the pain that people are in. We must make sure that we're checking in with those of us with the family members that we have who are our loved ones or who are our friends, and just how are you really doing and how are we really feeling and what kind of respite do you need and what kind of help and care and support, and just know that you're not alone. And for anybody on the call tonight, you're not alone. Reach out, get some support from the social services that are available. There are so many free services right now, support groups just for medical providers. I know right here in Philly, there's 2 of them. They're They're available to anybody 2 times a week, that medical providers can call in and get support for the intensity of what they're seeing and kind of experiencing. Reach out to the new mom who's home alone with her newborn baby, making sure that people know the resources that are available. And I have no doubt that Neshamos is one of those organizations. Amudim is another one of those organizations. Relief can kind of connect you to people. You are not alone in this struggle. You don't have to do this alone. And many, many people that you would never have imagined are struggling are really struggling. The providers are struggling too. So just recognizing that there is help out there and nobody should feel that they are alone in the situation. I think in the same vein, making sure that we're paying attention to our children too. That for those of us who have children, that paying attention to their mental health. So it's not enough to just say, well, everybody's dealing with it and I know it's so hard, but pay attention to the things that are happening. Are your children sleeping? Are they are they becoming more reclusive? Are they isolating? Are they expressing feelings of despair and hopelessness? That's not normal. And it might feel normal for an abnormal situation, but making sure that you're connected to really cueing in to what is going on with my children, especially if there's a history of mental health issues. So cueing in with your kids, paying attention, asking the questions, asking for advice and support from the professionals as well. So finally, just in conclusion, we're thinking about what are my choice points? What are the moments in my day who I might make a choice to do something that's a little bit more aligned with my values, that helps me be able to say one day when I look back, I was calmer, I was a little bit more mindful, I paid a few minutes of attention with my children, maybe I wasn't yelling as much as I was planning on yelling, things like that. What grounds me? How do I create that internal locus of safety and security and control when the whole world out there feels very chaotic? What fills me? What are the things that what's my oxygen? What is it that even for bite-sized pieces fills me up just enough so I can continue to give to others, my family, my spouse, my children, my community. And really just remember that we are in this together. It doesn't have to be pretty. We're in this together. And I think that one day, we'll look back and we can really think about like, one day we'll be able to say, like, what was my takeaway? What did I gain? What did I lose? But what did I gain from this circumstance? And I will grieve what I've lost, and I will respect and honor what I've gained as well. And this will be, no question, we don't know the end of the story, but this will be part of the story that we will tell in the next generation. And I definitely wonder what it will be like as it continues to unfold. So thank you for being here and listening. Let me take a quick look at the chat and offer some questions and answers, some answers to some of the questions. Looks like some of you already answered the questions for me. Thank you. So yeah, mat talk, M-A-T is like the mat that they kind of, that they do their floor routines on, mat talk, M-A-T. Okay, definitely can get my contact information from Neshamos, or I can post it in the chat here. If you wanted to reach out to me via email, that's fine. If you want to unmute your phone or kind of raise your hand, Mayor, do you want to kind of direct traffic and call on people? It's totally up to you. I can do too. Or I can just do it. What are some of your questions? All you have to do is kind of unmute your phone and I'm happy to answer some questions. I would love to know what are some of those things that you what are some of the things that would fill you up? What are some things that you've noticed really kind of fill you? Good. Okay, so somebody asked, what are, you can put it in the chat, by the way, if you don't want to answer, you can just put in things in the chat, some ideas of things that fill you. What are some 1 or 2 moments of things? Okay, so I'm not a coffee drinker, but I like my hot tea and I like my specific flavor of tea, and sometimes I even like the mug itself, right? Like this is one of my more favorite ones. Can you see this? So this I bought from the Tenement Museum in downtown. It says coffee, but I drink tea in my coffee mug. Okay, my New Yorker in me. Now, one of the things that I like is I will sit with my tea. Sometimes I won't even sit, but I'll just stand at the window and I'll say, this is my time to drink just 5 or 6 sips of tea by myself with no, maybe the kids are in their classes, in their Zoom classes, or there's nobody here right this minute calling my name. I have learned, the other thing is I've learned, yes, somebody posted davening, absolutely, taking a couple extra minutes to daven. I'm also trying to use words to acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the moments that I see him. So if I I notice the red cardinal and my children are around, especially. In my head, I can do it, but in that moment, I might say things like, look at the beautiful cardinal that Hashem just said, put outside of our window, or Hashem was so kind to me. He just sent me this gorgeous red cardinal. So using wording that is supportive to me as well. I see a lot of people are commenting, if you can find spirituality in taking care of the children that you have, then find it and say it out loud. I'm so thankful for the children that Hashem gave me, right? Or I'm so thankful for this moment where my child is screaming because I get to take care of that child. I have another woman who said to me, I sent my kids to daycare because I work full time and I've never thought I'd have this opportunity to be home and parenting my child. And it's so hard. And I'm co-parenting with my husband and it's so hard, but I'll never have these moments again. I didn't even realize what I was missing. It was a very powerful experience that I'm going to have a hard time going back to work. And I love my job, but I have these like stolen hours where I see him where he went from not knowing how to play Legos to where he knew how to play. Right? So there are people that are kind of being mindful of those moments, reading inspirational material, if that works for you. If it's queuing into a divrei chizuk, words of wisdom, words of support, a couple of minutes a day. Some people on that, like some people just have a hard time reading. I have a lot of people that are having a very hard time reading right now, that just the reading takes too much actually intensity, like it's just too hard for them to focus on that. And that could be something just to be aware of. So not everybody can, like reading or listening to something may be a little bit too much. Some people, so thinking about the things that where I can find beauty, where I can find joy, where I can find peacefulness, or if it's just quiet. So sometimes it's just sitting on the couch and not looking anywhere. I'm just closing my eyes for 2 minutes and just sitting with my feet on the ground and feeling the feelings of my body, just feeling my hands in my lap, my feet on the ground, the hat on my head, right? Just those mindful moments can be very helpful to me as well. Okay, some of the other questions in the chat here. Yeah. Okay, if you want to ask a question, by the way, you can just raise your hand. It's in the audio. It's one of the buttons there. And we can actually unmute you. Reading inspirational material, somebody's mentioning. Yeah. Yeah, so somebody else noted the idea of becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And it's hard, but noticing this is where we are. This is where I am. Yeah, interesting. So one deep, slow breath can be very grounding. Good breathing, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we have somebody who's raised their hand, David or David Altin. Did you want to unmute him? Yeah, and sometimes being uncomfortable with the uncomfortable is also good enough. Good. Words and affirmations are powerful. Good. There's some great ideas here in the chat. Okay, good. So somebody asked a good question. So do I have to unmute them? I'm not sure. So somebody asked the question, how do I reset after losing it in the middle of the day? And I love that question. I think it's really, really good. So I like that idea. So somebody just said, press your reset button. Good. Actually saw a really cute line where somebody said, those teachers, when we get back to school, are really going to miss the mute button that they get to use on Zoom. You know, I think about how well behaved some of my children are because the teacher gets to mute the class. So what's my reset button? What is it? Do I need to go to the bathroom, right? Do I need to lock the bedroom door and the bathroom door and count on my watch for 4 minutes, right? What is my reset button? Do I need to call in my partner if there is one and say, I need you to cover me for a minute. I'm gonna walk around the block. That might be my reset button. It might be to call a friend. Maybe you can take a minute and call a friend and be like, I'm losing it. I need a reset. And hopefully you have a good friend who can be like, okay, Dvora, let's pull together. You've got this, right? Maybe that's your reset. Coming outside for the fresh air, right? I saw a comment in there, what do I do with the kid who doesn't even want to go outside anymore? And I'm dealing with that too, with the kid who's just like, well, I'd rather stay inside. So I've resorted to bribery. And I think at this point in time, I really don't care, right? You need to bribe your kid to go outside, bribe them. Do what you have to do to make it work, right? To me, exercise is worth bribing for at this point. Not candy, but like bribery in that, like, if you do this, then we're going to do this together. So I think that there are certain things that are critical right now. One of them is getting outside. I think, I don't know that I'm qualified to answer the question that somebody posted specifically around teenagers. Again, we have a higher concern especially in that population, for anxiety and depression, right? So we want to be a little bit more alert. Being an introvert, isolating, those are all symptoms of depression as well. How do I identify if this is depression, right? If this is, pandemic? It's a challenge, and I would encourage you to reach out to a professional to ask those questions, right? I'm worried I'm getting used to being indoors. Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think that it's not just like getting used to being indoors, it's like out there feels scary. And so going there might feel anxiety producing to me, right? Right. Other comments, questions? Seems like we're having trouble with unmuting people, and I don't know what to do about that. Okay, so I think I'm gonna, unless there's any other pressing questions or concepts, like hopefully this was something that, you could definitely unmute yourself if anybody wants to ask a direct question. I'll give you a minute to do that, and I can always call on you. Anybody else? So hopefully this gave you some things to think about, some things to consider, some things to, kind of take a moment about. I hope kind of your task over the next 3 to 12 hours is, what can I notice? Like, what can I notice that will fill me? What can I notice that will bring me a peaceful moment? And giving myself that nap talk, giving myself the credit to say, I did a good job. Breakfast was good, or dinner was good, or we actually had vegetables, like things like that. Just succeeding in the moments in order to feel like we've got through another day. And we're doing a good enough job. Making sure that you reach out, please, if you feel like this is beyond what I'm talking about and things have gotten more difficult and complicated. Please don't do this alone. Please reach out and get help. So thank you, everybody, for today, for this evening, for spending time with me. And it's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is in the chat if you need some additional support. Faces from across the country. Some of my students are here tonight, some of my friends, and some of family. Okay, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.
Sweet. 9:22. Oh, we're early.